Hello everyone, this is Burke Lyle here on Burke Lyle Sports Talk, and one of the biggest stories going around in say sports and really in hockey really over the last 48 hours, 72 hours is really what's been going on with the Washington Capitals and New York Rangers. And going into Monday, and it was clear that the New York Rangers were having a disappointing season. No question. I mean, yes, the teams ahead of them, they're in 5th place in the division. The teams ahead of them were the Capitals, Penguins, Islanders, and Bruins. And last year, the Rangers lost to the Carolina Hurricanes. They made it to the qualifying round. You know what they did? They got bailed out by the shutdown. If the shutdown didn't happen, the Rangers aren't a playoff team. Since I remember, last March of 2020, kind of right before the shutdown took place, kind of in that time frame, you remember the Rangers, I thought, were kind of a borderline playoff team, and they kind of fell apart, kind of went on a little slump, for about a 10-day stretch, kind of right before really the shutdown happened, got bailed out, were invited to that Edmonton bubble, and then they lost in 3 straight games to the Carolina Hurricanes, and that was it. And that probably raised their expectation levels. And on paper, they seem like a fine team. I mean, they have got a lot to look forward to. Yes, they have had a lot of injuries this year. A lot of things that went wrong for them as well. But if you keep in mind the 4 teams that are ahead of them, the Capitals have made it to the playoffs as their 13th playoff appearance in the last 14 years, coached by Peter Laviolette. They've had their success. Pittsburgh Penguins, 15 straight playoff appearances, led by Sidney Crosby, Mike Sullivan, their head coach, when they won those 2 Stanley Cups. Penguins trying to win another Stanley Cup. So Caps and Penguins kind of at the back end of success of Ovechkin and Crosby era success. You don't know how much longer that's going to leave, but if one of those teams starts to fall and decline over the next couple of years, and that may open up a door for the Rangers. The Bruins, who, again, we weren't certain if they make it to the playoffs at various points this year, won the President's Trophy last year, went to the finals in 2019, still having success with the perfection line. Marchand and Bergeron don't appear to be slowing down as they enter their really for Bergeron, his mid-30s. And then the Islanders, who again, I've looked at the stats. They have struggled to score in recent success. I think not having Anders Lees hurts a lot, but they went to the conference finals last year, and they're very well coached by Barry Trotz. So those 4 teams are good reasons why they're better than the New York Rangers. And that's not the biggest storyline. Yes, the Rangers missed the playoffs. Yes, it seemed likely they'd miss the playoffs for a number of weeks at this point. But it really all started. It was kind of in that second period as Pavel Buchnevich and Tom Wilson. And what happened is Tom Wilson kind of started attacking Buchnevich from behind. And now, was that necessary? I don't know. And then I think multiple Rangers got involved. I think the most notable thing, this is the big point, Artemi Panarin gets involved. And of course, there's a major size difference. Tom Wilson, obviously, huge player, known for hitting, known for getting into fights, fought Zdeno Chara last year in December. Probably the guy in the Capitals most likely to get into a fight. Has got his things with Ryan Reeves in the past, who was another huge guy in Vegas. Size guy, ends up fighting Artemi Panarin. I think throws him down and then starts punching him. Panarin decided to rest for the rest of this year, will not play for the rest of this year. Didn't seem to be too hurt in that incident, but again, just a dangerous play. And the Rangers, obviously, they issued a statement. And this is, well, and it appeared that they were being very biased. They were obviously against the league in their decision. In fact, I'm pulling up the statement right now, but they were very critical, obviously, of the Department of Player Safety. In fact, this is a statement from the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers are extremely disappointed that Capitals forward Tom Wilson exact words, was not suspended for his horrific act of violence last night at Madison Square Garden. Wilson, a repeat offender with a long history of these types of acts, we find it shocking that the NHL and their Department of Player Safety failed to take appropriate action and suspend him indefinitely. Wilson's dangerous and reckless actions caused an injury to Artemi Panarin that will prevent him from playing again this season. We view this as this is a big word here, declaration of duty by the head of player safety, George Paros, and believe that he is unfit to continue in his current role. So you look at that, right? So that's the Rangers obviously complaining about the situation. Now, granted, I saw that situation and I thought, okay, does Tom Wilson, should he be suspended or not? And you look at it, and I thought maybe give him a game, just, hey, can't do this, gotta give him a game. And maybe the situation is cleared, that's what happens. But the Rangers say he should have been suspended indefinitely. Now, granted, Panarin attacked Wilson, so what are you going to do? This is hockey. You're going to fight back. And yes, this was a game where the Capitals won. And Panarin, I feel like if the Rangers weren't well out of it, I think would have just kept playing through the injury. But it turned out that Panarin's not playing, and obviously the Rangers are attacking the NHL, attacking the director of player safety. Now, granted, these things happen in hockey. Fighting happens. It's part of the game. Fighting happens all the time. Did that fight get out of control? Was Wilson out of control? Yes. And again, normally when you see fights, they're evenly matched players. Like Wilson and Panarin, that was an unfair fight. Now, granted, it wasn't a designed fight. I mean, remember, Andrei Shevchenko wanted to fight Alex Ovechkin a couple years ago in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Ovechkin, heavyweight player, doesn't usually fight, not really a fighter. Snetchnikov wanted him to fight, and they went, and Ovi knocked out Snetchnikov. And guess what? Should Ovi be suspended for that? No. Again, it was the Snetchnikov's idea, and he ended up missing numerous playoff games from getting a concussion from fighting and getting knocked out. So Panarin, again, I'm trying to stay as neutral as possible in this situation. Panarin wanted to fight, I don't think it was a plain fight, but seriously got involved with Tom Wilson, and Tom Wilson got it. Panarin and the league could have suspended Wilson for 1 or 2 games, as long as they weren't playing the Rangers. But you know what happened, and I had a feeling this might be happening. I was thinking, you know what, fights are going to happen right now. I figured they would happen in retaliation, and the most suspicious thing that happened is both teams started their fourth lines at the start of the face-off, right? Fourth line against fourth line. Normally, fourth line guys, not always, but a lot of the time, are usually not as important. They're probably the players least likely to score a goal. They're probably the players maybe most likely to get into a fight. Probably most likely to be scratched. Probably most likely to be sent down in the minors. So it was fourth line against fourth line to start the game, and they started fighting right away. And they were fighting. This is last night's Capitals-Rangers game, so it's just 48 hours after what happened earlier. And so 3 guys on each team go to the penalty box for 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes for fighting in hockey. So they go to the penalty box. And then, maybe a minute later or so, Tom Wilson gets into a fight with Brandon Smith of the New York Rangers. A fight breaks out there. So there ends up being a fight. So now there's 4 guys on each penalty in the penalty box for each team. And Michael Raffel, and I believe it was, got in a fight with someone on the Capitals. I can't remember the Rangers player. So there's 5 fights, and then so in total there's 6 fights. Lars Eller got involved in another fight for the Capitals. So there's a total of 6 fights in about 5 minutes. Penalty box was very crowded in today's day and age, and there's pictures online. Look up Capitals Rangers penalty box. and you'll see it's very crowded and not normal. And this is a type of era where fighting is less common as it's ever been. Fights are down. I think parts of the reasons are the type of players that get in fights are not as valuable in the league as they once were. I think having visors on helmets, which is pretty much mandatory by the league, almost everybody does at this point in time, that probably makes fighting harder and less effective. Fighting is not the same as it used to be. Yes, it is still part of the game. Yes, it still happens, but the rates of fights are just way down. They might happen, I think, every couple games per team, and usually maybe one fight per game happens. But this resulted in 6 fights all happening. This was a brawl, and sometimes teams just do this to settle their differences, and they just kept happening. I mean, we had 6 fights in the first 5 minutes of the game, so that resulted in a lot of guys in the penalty box, not socially distanced. Again, in today's day and age, if you want to talk about socially distancing, that is not an example of it. And then the fights broke out, and you wonder, I think, watching the NBC broadcast, Pierre Maguire referenced this, and many people reference this as well. If Wilson is suspended, do these fights even happen? Since obviously, as soon as Wilson got on the ice, a fight broke out with Tom Wilson and Brendan Smith, and that did not settle everything. Which, again, if fights keep happening, and you wonder if they'll continue. And again, this was a big discussion. You wonder what Tom Wilson did beforehand, and then you wonder what happened afterwards. And not only that, I think there was the Pavel Buchnevich cross-check on Anthony Mantha as well. It's amazing how we didn't have a 7th fight in that game. So just so much fighting going on. It was unbelievable. And again, it's what the storyline should have been is, and this was kind of maybe the storyline going into the series, going into that brief 2-game series at MSG, is Evgeny Kuznetsov was in the COVID protocols once again, disciplinary reasons. Ovechkin tried to play and couldn't, end up missing most of that series due to injury. So again, re-aggravate that injury. That's what the storyline should have been. And then not only that, the Rangers fire their front office. Jeff Gordon and John Davidson. Chris Drury will take over as general manager for the New York Rangers. So in that regard, that was kind of overshadowed. And again, a big New York media sports story. And you wonder, did the firings happen so soon? Again, I don't know if the Rangers were quite ready to win this year. They had a lot of injuries going on there in that regard. So just it really becomes a big point in time. But if you maybe setting a precedent in the future, if incidents like that happen again, I just give a player a game or 2 suspension. I mean, you fine Tom Wilson $5,000, big deal. Tom Wilson makes $6 million a year or something like that. So $5,000 fining a player. I mean, I don't know. That's the maximum you can fine them. Yes, the league does suspend guys for certain violence, but at the end of the day, hockey, like football, is a violent game. Fights will happen. Violence will continue in hockey. I don't think violence is going away in hockey. Certainly the hitting. I mean, the league has tried to make adjustments to that. And yes, what Wilson and Panarin did was dangerous. You shouldn't have heavyweights fighting, say, lightweights, like what Panarin is. Kind of a smaller guy. And again, it was one of the league's very best players, and it was also the New York Rangers, a team on the rise. So, again, what Wilson did, now I think about it, I think he should have gotten a game or 2 just to kind of say, hey, you can't do things like that already. I think got a 7-game suspension for a certain hit on Brandon Carlo. Again, it was fighting, not a certain hit. It's not like, I think Panarin kind of charged at Wilson as well. Again, Wilson could have used better discipline. So we had our fair share of fights again. Capitals, Rangers, it's a rivalry. They've been rivals for decades now. They've met off each other in the playoffs. I think 9, 11, 12, 13, 15, I think they met 5 times in 7 years. Kind of in that era of rivalries. Obviously, the Rangers had their fair share of success. I felt like they peaked in 12 through 15 when they went to the conference finals. 3 of those years, won a President's Trophy, went to a Stanley Cup Finals, never won one, but they had their share of success. They're rebuilding now. They're trying to get kind of back to that level, and I feel like they're on the rise, and I feel like next year the Rangers, I feel like they will be a playoff team. They're very young. You wonder what their new front office would look like. You wonder about Coach David Quinn, if, say, the current front office will fire him. Like, again, Chris Drury's from in the organization, so he knows David Quinn. Maybe not, but it's interesting how the front office went before the coach. Quinn's been there for 3 years. I feel like the Rangers have made progress. Yes, this year was a disappointment for the Rangers organization and this incident going on. I mean, obviously you had that storyline of what happened beforehand, going in, and then clearly, just to recap, when I saw the fourth lines on the ice, I was thinking they're going to fight. So when I found out the news that there was fighting and saw the fights, I was not surprised at all. I really wasn't. I mean, I knew it was coming. Now, the additional fights, there was 3 other additional fights as well. That kind of surprised me a bit. So again, Caps and Rangers, they're done playing each other this year. That is settled. I don't think this will be like Avs Red Wings. The league's not as physical as it was back then. There's a rules against that. But in terms of Avs Red Wings, but I don't think this will carry over too much. Again, they're rivals. They're going to get into, the Caps and Rangers are going to get into some fights. There's going to be moments like that. They've played each other 8 times this year. This is going to continue. Tom Wilson, I feel like, is going to have some controversial hits down the road, whether it's in the playoffs this year or these type of things are going to happen. There's going to be these controversial hits. Whenever there's someone with Tom Wilson with a controversial hit, then knowing his history, I wouldn't be surprised if Wilson gets suspended again. Now, again, he can't go over the top and get suspended for whatever it is, 7, 10 games, can't do that. Or be suspended for 3 games in the playoffs like he was 3 years ago on a hit against the Penguins. Wilson needs to calm down. I feel like he's not quite as aggressive as he used to be. You know, he's not this fourth line guy. He's just going to get into some fights, hit guys. No. Now I think is more of a, and again, he could be team captain one day, is more of a responsible, I'd say, first line player who can now score goals, can be on the power play, can be on the penalty kill. So again, I'd say Wilson is lucky that was not suspended for numerous games. Now again, maybe suspend Wilson and these fightings don't happen. I don't know. It was a nationally televised game. Obviously, the product you saw last night was not great for the league. I mean, again, think about it. You know what should have been the story of the game? TJ Oshie scoring a hat trick in honor, playing his first game since his late father passed away, who obviously was very well known during the Stanley Cup Finals when Oshie got the cup, and his dad was on the ice back then. That should have been more of the story of the game, what TJ Oshie did, but no one's talking about that. That is a lot less of the story, and kind of that really good human interest story. That's what should have been the story of the game, but no, it's all the fighting and what happened at the beginning of the game and kind of leading up to that game. That was a major storyline, and I felt like I had to talk about it, had to give my thoughts on that. So, we're in the final week of the NHL season. We currently have, really, it's going to vary. I mean, the Canucks' schedule is going to drag on for almost another 2 weeks. I hope the league can get the playoffs started within the next, say, 10 days to 2 weeks. Obviously, I don't know if that is quite going to be the case. Again, the NHL struggled a lot with COVID postponements, especially the Canucks. They're the biggest issue, but far from that, teams lost a lot of games, a lot of postponements happened. Obviously, in this COVID era, the NBA had some trouble with that as well. The NFL had major issues. Major League Baseball had major issues. Last year, they had tons of issues. This year, not as much. I think other than the Nationals issue, they've mostly been okay. Yes, individual players have been affected, so you hope as the season goes on with Major League Baseball, you hope as, say, the NBA and NHL seasons wrap up, you wonder how full arenas will be in 2 months from now, say during the Stanley Cup and NBA Finals. And as we get closer into the summer and into the fall, you wonder if we'll start to see things that we saw, say, 14 months ago, 15 months ago, the very early days of 2020. We're wondering if we're getting back to those levels. So we'll see. So I want to continue making videos, want to make some baseball videos, maybe also whatever videos come to mind. So that's everything, and we will see you next time. This is Burke Lyle here on Burke Lyle Sports Talk.